This is what the Russians call the liberation of Mariupol. Flats, no longer homes. Buses incinerated. Tombstones engraved by marker pen.
It is damp in the basement, cold. You're lying there hoping they won't bomb you. Look how many dead bodies we've buried around the building.
To those who think there's anything positive in Moscow's decision to shift its gaze from Western Ukraine to here in the Donbass, don't forget, this is what Vladimir Putin does when he's focused. Sometimes all you can do is stop, sit, and try to fathom that a month ago this was a bustling city of nearly 500,000. Astonishingly, 100,000 people still live here, trapped and waiting for a way out. Many have managed to flee north to Zaporizhia, even if they can barely see the path ahead. Despite the devastation inflicted by Moscow, Ukraine has declared Russia's strategic shift a victory for their cause.
Over the past week, our heroic armed forces have dealt powerful blows to the enemy, significant losses. They say that the Minister of Defense of Russia has disappeared somewhere.
The minister in question, Sergei Shoigu, did appear in this clip released today, amid speculation he had a heart attack. But there's nothing to tell us when this Russian footage was filmed. And that's the concern. What to make of the messages from Moscow? Because if their focus is on the east, why release footage showing a missile launch that they say hit a region not far from Kyiv? And the destruction continues in cities like Chernihiv to the north, with the Russian Prime Minister today again raising the spectre of nuclear weapons. And in Kharkiv, the sandbags pile high around a statue to the Ukrainian poet Taras Shevchenko, a national hero born into serfdom who found his freedom. They don't believe the Kremlin's words here as the missiles fall outside of the Donbass. And as both sides bed into a potentially long war, the Ukrainians worry about depleting resources. They want and they got more support from this man today, President Biden, who met with Ukraine's defense minister.
Ukrainian stamina and Western weapons, mostly American weapons, is the recipe for success on the battleground.
As President Biden met with Ukrainian refugees in Warsaw. Across the city, protesters lay on the ground to highlight those killed by the Russian invasion. With many calling for less promises and more action, President Biden called on Putin to end his war.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia, for free people refused to live in a world of hopelessness and darkness. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Many Ukrainians will welcome those words, a hope that can sustain their ongoing resistance.
Well, it's been very difficult making contact with those people inside Mariupol, but a short while ago I got through to the deputy mayor there, Sergei Orlov, and I asked him how much of the city the Russians now control.
Our estimation is that up to 50%, but a little less. So Russia temporarily occupies and controls eastern part, outskirts in eastern part of our city, and northern west part of our city. It's just outskirts. So a lot of battles, a lot of street battles, tank battles goes in the center of the city and other districts. We know that fights for center of the city continues for 7 to 10 days. So there's still a lot of fights, and Ukrainian army as a battalion continues.
Are any supplies getting through to people now? Or are people, we're hearing reports of people starving?
No, any support, supply or transferring any kind of goods is possible for 25 days. All people that that we estimate they're still in Mariupol and live there, all of them live underground in any, I mean, it's like a bomb shelter or just simple shelter or just some space below earth in the condominiums, in many flat houses, where people try to be safe as possible in time of airstrikes using missiles. So people do not have any access to any utility, unfortunately, and any supplement.
What is the latest from the theatre? Are people actually bringing bodies out, or is it too dangerous to work there?
We estimate that about 600 citizens were able to evacuate. They did it by themselves with helping each other, or some neighbors in neighboring houses helped them, because it's impossible to provide any police help, any rescue help. So our estimation is that 600 citizens were able to evacuate. Unfortunately, up to 300 citizens were killed against this airstrike.
The President of France is trying to say there should be a humanitarian corridor to get more people out of Mariupol. Do you think that's possible?
Such leaders will find any possibility to provide this humanitarian evacuation, because they are not asking not to attack Mariupol, they are not asking to stop the war, they just ask simple thing: give us possibility to evacuate civilians, and I think it's possible to reach somehow with their help.
Are there functioning hospitals still in Mariupol? Because we've seen hospitals being bombed and also being taken over, according to reports by Russian forces.
In our estimation, 70% of our hospitals and our medical opportunities are destroyed. So we know about cases of working of our hospitals, and like our left doctors are real heroes because they work in the same condition as the city. They don't have access to everything, but they continue to rescue life and save lives of our injured people. For example, we know that in one of the hospitals, they destroyed 80% of the hospital, and doctors are living in bomb shelter in this hospital with their families, and they continue to operate. And there is about 200 injured people, and there are very hard injuring people, and they continue to rescue. And for these 200 patients, they have 6 doctors, and that's all. They have some little diesel that relatives of patient gives to them. They start diesel generators, produce some electricity, and do surgery operation, and minimal help that can do in such condition. They are real heroes.
Sergei Orlov, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, there have been 2 notable attacks on the outskirts of this western city of Lviv. One was a military camp in which many people were killed. But as we reported earlier, today the city came under attack for the first time. Within minutes of the sirens, we heard the explosion and saw the smoke. An ominous scene for the people here who had perhaps started to think the war might never arrive, after Russia said it was focusing on Donbass, hundreds of miles away. The target was a fuel depot. Only this morning, the local authority had claimed they had enough fuel for the whole region. Perhaps not now. 5 people were injured. With help from his wife on the phone to translate, Igor, who lives next to the oil depot, told how frightening it is now the war is here.
At this moment, I understand what is the war, what war bring. Дуже страшно, Ліда.
I was very afraid.
Yeah, I was
terrified.
And there was another attack this evening in which the local authorities say infrastructure has been damaged. Now, in the south, there are reports the Ukrainian military is fighting Russian forces on the edge of the region of Kherson. The city of Kherson was the first big urban centre taken by the Russians at the very beginning of the war. Both Kherson and Mykolaiv are strategic towns on the Black Sea, linking the east to the main port city of Odessa. from where our chief correspondent Alex Thompson has been assessing Russia's claim to a change in military tactics.
Outside Mykolaiv, we watch as Ukrainian volunteers haul away destroyed Russian armour. Not far off, a tractor retrieves a captured Russian anti-aircraft gun.
Slava Ukraini!
Slava Ukraina! Glory to Ukraine, the slogan you hear everywhere here. Near Mykolaiv, the Ukrainian army claims to have shot down another Russian fighter. Evidence emerging all around this city of 500,000 people in peacetime that Ukraine's advancing on the Mykolaiv front, not Russia.
There's a lot of reporting to suggest that the Ukrainians are putting in a counteroffensive in the south towards Kherson and actually starting to try and recapture parts of Kherson itself. Up until now, all of the Ukrainian counterattacks have mainly been focused around Kiev. So if the current fighting there is easing off slightly, they can put more effort in the south.
So could Kherson to the south now be the prize? Protesters have confronted Russian occupiers there for weeks now. 2 days ago, they draped the town hall in the Ukrainian flag. Doubts grow over how much control Russia really has over the place, and Kherson matters.
It's on the coast, and you kind of, if the Russians are going to push forward and take, for example, Odessa, they need strategic depth, and the fact if they don't have Kherson, they basically can't move on Odessa.
Last night, a massive Kremlin change, scaling down the war to focus just on the eastern Donbass region. It's a long way from changing the regime of neo-Nazis that Vladimir Putin spoke of just a month ago. Since then, at least 7 Russian commanders killed, Russian armoured columns time and again closely grouped and picked off like sitting ducks. Russia's unwillingness or inability to engage in urban ground fighting essential to take over cities. Instead, relentless and possibly criminal bombardment of cities like Mariupol. Russia's strategy confused and chaotic, according to the Pentagon and Ministry of Defense. And all of that achieved, of course, without NATO troops on the ground, without a no-fly zone, and perhaps because of that, without a Third World War. Ukrainian troops have benefited greatly from British-supplied anti-tank missiles, a large amount of EU lethal aid, and coming on stream now, the beginnings of $800 million worth of US military aid. That's ground-to-air missile systems, air defense systems, and armed drones. Those arms, arguably NATO's proxy war, have kept cities like Odessa and western Ukraine largely safe. And may now be tipping the balance of war in the east in Ukraine's favor. No wonder Moscow has had a rethink. So already the Kremlin's message just yesterday that it would concentrate on the eastern Donbass region being tested against reality in the north, in the south and the west of Ukraine. But the Ukrainians too, they have a very slick, very sophisticated PR message disseminated across this country. Like any organised army in a time of conflict, you have to go through enormous amounts of roadblocks just to get to where, or even near where the fighting is. And the Ukrainians are not backward about saying they are hiding certain elements of the truth, not least in this area around Mykolaiv, the numbers of people being killed. I don't just mean soldiers being killed and injured, Russian soldiers as well, their bodies being taken into the mortuaries around that city, but the numbers of civilians as well. Yes, it is clear and it is demonstrable and proven that the Ukrainian army is making gains down here, but at some price in human life.